Yesterday, we started breaking down the defenseman for the Columbus Blue Jackets this season, and we're continuing that today. We're talking about Scott Harrington, currently unsigned. Is there a chance the Blue Jackets bring him back on a cheap deal? Should there be more players like Scott Harrington in the NHL? And does he have a future with the team if he does get re-signed? Let's talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day, every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and also over on YouTube. So if you haven't hit subscribe over there, then feel free to go and do so. I appreciate you if you do that. I appreciate you if you don't do that, but I will appreciate you just a little bit more if you do. I am Jay Foster. I am your host, here to bring you the trials, the tribulations, the joys, the excitements, the good, the bad, the everything in between of your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. And maybe the most in-betweeniest of all of the Blue Jackets for the past few seasons, Scott Harrington. And that's who we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be looking at his season with the Blue Jackets. We'll take a quick look at his season with the Cleveland Monsters as well. And he hasn't been signed, so we'll take a look at if he does get re-signed, then what happens? Does he end up in the AHL? Does he play the role he's played for the Blue Jackets for the last few years? And what exactly is that role? And why is it so important? We're talking about all of this. So let's kick things off. Scott Harrington has been playing a very specific role for the Blue Jackets the past few years, and honestly, I think he's been doing pretty good at it, even though it's not a super common role. I don't think. Scott Harrington is essentially the permanent seventh defenseman. What I've noticed is a lot of teams tend to mix it around, and sometimes they'll roll, 7 or 8 defensemen throughout a season, and the bottom pairing will get swapped out, in and out, quite often. What the Blue Jackets have kind of done with Scott Harrington is he's been their go-to seventh defenseman for a pretty long time now. And so what he's been doing is sitting on the bench or sitting in the press box and practicing with the team. And if anyone is injured or they want to healthy scratch someone to, give them a different look at the game or whatever nonsense they decide to healthy scratch someone for, Scott Harrington jumps in. And he hasn't played a lot the past few seasons. Last season, he only played 7 games with the Blue Jackets. He did play 50 games with the Cleveland Monsters. We'll get into that in a minute. The season before that, he played 12 games. The season before that, 39. And then the season before that, he actually played almost all of the games. He played 73 games in the 18-19 season, where he also got his career high in points of 17. So not super offensively minded. Scott Harrington is definitely more of a defensive stay-at-home guy, and also is a guy that, honestly, I feel like is a guy that, and we've talked about this before with goalies, is this idea of 2 types of goalies. There are goalies where the more they play, the better they get, and there are goalies who don't do that. You get some goalies who the less they play, they're good at, the career backups. I always compare, Scott Pasalo, who's a guy that plays better the more he plays, versus a guy like Curtis McElhinney, who was the backup before him, who was a very good backup and who could reliably play, maybe 15 to 20 games a season, maybe upwards, close to 30, and still be fine for the Blue Jackets. And Scott Harrington is never going to be a permanent addition to an NHL lineup, I don't think. What he is fine. And honestly, that's all the Blue Jackets needed him to be the past few seasons. This season, there was kind of a weird logjam on young defensemen that they wanted to take a look at. So they had Gabriel Carlson, they had Dean Kukan, they had Andrew Peak, all of these guys that they wanted to kind of get a look at. And all of these guys that they thought had higher ceilings and higher potential than Scott Harrington, and so he ended up, I believe he went on waivers actually to get sent down to the AHL, where he played the rest of the season with the Monsters. Didn't get called up when they started losing defensemen, which surprised me a little bit, but he wasn't great in the clip for the Monsters. He only had 7 points in 50 games for them, which is not ideal. And as such, he is currently a UFA and is not signed by anyone. So still looking for a contract. There's still a chance that the Blue Jackets bring him back. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I also wouldn't be surprised if he signed somewhere else, though. So we're going to talk about that in a second. Talk a little bit more about kind of how important that role is for guys like Scott Harrington to have on a team. But first, I've got to tell you about Built Bar, because there is a brand new Built Bar flavor. I'm super excited for it, and you should be as well. It is delicious, indulgent cookie dough covered in 100% chocolate. Built brought back the cookie dough chunk, but they put it in puff form. Delicious marshmallow chunks of cookie dough, again, covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating the cookie dough without the hassle of making it. And it's good for you as well. They've only got 160 calories, excuse me. They've got 15 grams of protein in them. So run to built.com to snag a box for you and the family. It will be the perfect treat. Or you can do what I do and just find a really good hiding place and hoard them for yourself. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or you just need to grab a quick bite. Built is the perfect protein bar, and they taste better than a candy bar. So ditch the calories, fat, and sugar, and grab yourself a Built bar. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKEDON15. Once again, that is LOCKEDON15 to get 15% off your order. Built.com, promo code LOCKEDON15. Run, don't walk. So the seventh defenseman is a role that the Blue Jackets, I think, have done well with. And honestly, if I looked into it, I'm sure that there are some other teams who have kind of done a similar thing. Having Scott Harrington in the press box, and having a guy like Scott Harrington that is that exact kind of juxtaposition of good enough to be in the NHL, but not quite good enough to have a permanent spot, is a really hard thing to find. I feel like, you get a lot of bubble guys that bounce up and down, and that's kind of the same thing. But Scott Harrington has never seemed like a guy that resents his role in the organization. He turns up, he practices every practice. He's always there unless he's ill or injured or whatever. But that's the point. Good team guy. Everyone seems to like him. And he gets a chance to play when he gets a chance to play. I think he's always looking to show the coaching staff that he deserves this spot. I don't think it's a case of, oh, Scott's here, we'll just throw him in the lineup because Werenski's injured. It's, hey, we can rely on Scott Harrington. He shows up, he works hard, he's got a good attitude, and we need someone to plug in this hole for a couple of games at a time. And so that's kind of what Scott Harrington does. Old enough to, I think, probably be at his ceiling with his development, if not slightly past. He's, I think, 29, maybe 28. He just turned 29. So, he's not a prospect. He's not someone who, they want necessarily to send down to Cleveland to get reps. He's a guy that, for better or worse, this is what Scott Harrington is. And honestly, I think it's really solidified the Blue Jackets' defensive core the past couple of seasons. I think having a guy like that where you don't have to worry, you don't have to, rush your prospects, or, I know Jake Christensen, for example, got a call up this season, got a couple of games in. Like the look of him. I'll be interested to see if he makes it into the mix. I didn't even mention him in yesterday's episode when I talked about how deep the defense is on the right side. But I mean, I like Scott Harrington, especially if you're on the road and they're in Vancouver or Seattle or, I don't know, California. They don't have to call Cleveland to be like, hey, get so-and-so on a plane right now. We need him for tonight's game. Scott Harrington has eliminated that. He's the smash glass in case of emergency player. And I think he's done that really, really well. And I'm surprised that the Blue Jackets didn't re-sign him, honestly, even if it was for a cheap a cheap deal. He was not on a ton of money past few seasons. He was making 1.6 or 1.6333, 3-year contract that has now expired. I think you could get him for $1 million, honestly. And I'm wondering if someone else is going to take that role this season. I'm not sure who that's going to be, but, and again, I mentioned this a little bit in yesterday's episode. There are a lot of those right side defensemen that are going to be kind of clamoring for space. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Blue Jackets carry 7 or 8 defensemen all season, and rotate them in and out. And unfortunately, Scott Harrington has kind of found himself on the end of a losing battle here. In a minute, we are going to talk about that a little bit more. We're going to take a quick look at kind of Scott Harrington's career so far, and honestly, we'll take a look at the Blue Jackets defense once again and see if there is room for him to slide back in there. That's all coming up next on Locked On Blue Jackets. So Scott Harrington is, and again, I've talked about this. He is the prototypical bubble guy. He didn't really make it full time into the NHL until 2018-19. Played one season and then kind of turned back into the seventh defenseman. Started his career with Wilkes-Barre Scranton. Had a couple of games in Pittsburgh. Was with the Marlies for a season, and then got traded to Columbus. So it's I don't know. He's a perfectly serviceable bottom pairing guy on a bad team or on a not as good team. You know, I don't know that he'd be getting the ice time if he was with the Colorado Avalanche, for example. Former second round pick, which surprised me, honestly, and that's no disrespect to Scott Harrington, but the way he plays his game, the way kind of the way I think about him is, oh yeah, this is a seventh round guy that fought to have his place in the NHL, and apparently that's not how it went at all. But that's kind of beside the point here. I like Scott Harrington a lot. I think he's done a lot of good for this team. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they re-signed him. I wouldn't be surprised if he re-signs somewhere else. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets an AHL deal, maybe. I could see him getting a two-way deal as well. That, especially in terms of Cleveland is probably going to lose some bodies this season, and I think Scott Harrington could be a pretty good veteran presence on that team. It makes me feel ancient when I talk about 29-year-olds being veteran presences, but that's fine. Yeah, I do genuinely think that he has a future with the team. I think it wouldn't be a terrible signing, honestly. If you can get him for, I don't know, 800 to 900K one way, and then pay him, I don't even know how the minors salary works, but pay him a lot less to be in the minors. I could see that working out very well. If you need him, you can call him up. And he's, again, break glass in case of emergency. If you need him, you need him. I think he's a good guy to have in case you need him. But I can also, looking at the Blue Jackets in general, it'll be interesting to see how the defense shakes out. He's actually a left defenseman, so there's a little bit more wiggle room there for Harrington in terms of space, just because there's only 2, maybe 3 left defensemen that are, NHL ready on the team right now. Obviously, Werenski, Gavrikov is also a lefty, and then apparently Jake Bean and Gavin Bayreuther can play either or. And then, off roster guys, we have Matejchuk is a lefty. He's really the only guy that I could see maybe getting some games in. Jake Christensen plays both sides. And then you got guys like Knazko and Svozil. I don't think they will be in the NHL this season, but the point remains, there is, I think, space for Harrington to be on this team. I don't know if it's right now, though. So I don't think we will see him in a Blue Jackets sweater this coming season. They just have too many defensemen at the minute. I don't think it makes sense to re-sign him. I could see why they would, and I think a very good argument could be made for re-signing him, but I don't think they do. I think the Gabranson signing, especially, I think, is pretty indicative of what Kekalainen and kind of what Brad Larson think of their defense core at the minute. I feel like they've brought Branson in to kind of be the Scott Harrington and the Andrew Peak and the David Savard and, all of these things, and then pay him a ridiculous amount of money to do so. I promise I'm not going to just dunk on Eric Branson in every single defenseman review. I promise I'm not. This is 2 in a row. I know it looks like a pattern, but it's fine. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to finish by giving Scott Harrington a grade. I realized I didn't give Andrew Peak a grade yesterday. I'm giving him a B. I'll give Andrew Peak a B. Scott Harrington, I'm giving him an incomplete. I gave a couple of forwards incompletes. He only played 7 games for the Blue Jackets. He did his role. He was fine, unnoticeable mostly, which I think is what you want from your third pairing defenseman. But he just didn't play enough games. And unfortunately, I don't think he made as much of an impact on the Monsters as he could have done. The Monsters really needed some stabilizing, and I don't know that he offered that to them. I didn't watch as many Monsters games as I watched Blue Jackets games, but there were very few times where I was like, oh, hey, there's Scott Harrington. And I feel like if you're a NHL ready guy, you should be showing up in the AHL. So that's a little review for Scott Harrington. Tomorrow, we're not going to have a new episode because we're still on 3 a week. So the next episode will be Wednesday, and we're going to be talking about Gavin Bayreuther, who is another interesting fellow for the Blue Jackets' future. He's a UFA after this season, so we'll see where that goes. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at LO_Blue Jackets. It's the podcast Twitter. I keep doing that. You can find me at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the podcast at the address I just said, LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms, and we're also over on YouTube. I appreciate you making us your first listen of the day, or your second listen of the day, or your last listen of the day. I just appreciate you coming to hang out with me for 20 or so minutes. And until Wednesday, make sure you stay locked on.